Last night, while much of the world slept, global politics lurched violently off its axis. In a series of early morning announcements, Donald Trump stated that United States forces had carried out a military operation inside Venezuela. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro had been detained and removed from the country. Within hours, Trump declared that the United States would run Venezuela during what he described as a transitional period. The claims triggered immediate international shock, emergency diplomatic responses, and widespread uncertainty about what exactly had occurred on the ground. This is what has been said, this is what is known, and this is why the consequences matter. What was announced? Speaking publicly after the alleged operation, Trump asserted that U.S. forces had conducted a targeted action against the Venezuelan government overnight. He stated that President Maduro had been captured and transported out of the country and that the United States would assume administrative control. Trump framed the action as a necessary intervention, citing Venezuela's political instability, economic collapse, and alleged criminal activity tied to the state. He did not present independent verification during the announcement. The language used was not diplomatic, it was managerial. "We're going to run the country," Trump said, describing U.S. oversight as temporary but necessary. Those words immediately drew comparisons to past U.S. interventions in Latin America and the Middle East, even as details remained contested. Immediate confusion on the ground. Within Venezuela, official channels disputed the U.S. account. State-aligned media denied that Maduro had been captured and described U.S. statements as false and inflammatory. Government officials referred to any foreign military action as an act of aggression and insisted that Venezuelan sovereignty remained intact. Independent confirmation proved difficult. Airspace disruptions were reported. Communications were inconsistent. Social media filled the vacuum with speculation, videos of explosions, and unverified claims moving faster than confirmation could keep up. What was clear was this: something had happened. What was not clear was its scope, legality, or outcome. The phrase that changed the story. Trump's declaration that the United States would run Venezuela transformed the situation from a disputed military claim into a geopolitical crisis. The phrase implied governance, not pressure, control, not influence. Under international law, running another sovereign nation without consent constitutes occupation. That distinction mattered immediately. Within hours, diplomats, legal experts, and foreign governments shifted their focus away from the capture of Maduro and toward the implications of the statement itself. International reaction begins. Governments across Latin America reacted first. Regional leaders expressed alarm, warning that any unilateral military action threatened continental stability. Statements from Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico emphasized non-intervention and the danger of setting a precedent where powerful states remove leaders by force. European governments issued cautious but firm responses, calling for clarification and restraint. Russia and China condemned the claims outright, framing them as evidence of U.S. disregard for international law and sovereignty. Behind closed doors, emergency diplomatic channels activated. The question wasn't about Maduro being detained. The question was whether the international order had just crossed a line. The legal problem. Under the United Nations Charter, the use of force against a sovereign state is prohibited, except in cases of self-defense or with Security Council authorization. No such authorization was announced. No imminent attack by Venezuela on the United States had been claimed. If Trump's account were accurate, legal experts argued the action would face immediate challenges under international law. If the account were inaccurate, the implications were arguably worse: a U.S. leader publicly asserting control over another nation without verification. Either scenario destabilized norms that have, however, imperfectly governed international conduct for decades. The historical context no one could ignore. For Latin America, the words, "we will run the country," are not abstract. They echo a long history of U.S. interventions justified by instability, corruption, or ideological threat. From Guatemala to Chile to Panama, the pattern has been familiar. Declare failure, intervene, install oversight, promise transition. Trump's phrasing bypassed even the language of justification. There was no mention of democracy promotion, humanitarian corridors, or multilateral coalitions, only control. That bluntness unsettled allies and adversaries alike. Domestic fallout inside the United States. Within the U.S., reactions split sharply. Supporters framed the move as decisive leadership and long overdue action against what they described as a criminal regime. Critics questioned Trump's authority to initiate military action without congressional approval, warning of constitutional violations and unchecked executive power. Legal scholars immediately raised concerns about the War Powers Resolution and the absence of legislative consent. Financial markets reacted with volatility, reflecting fears of escalation and prolonged instability in global energy supplies. The oil question. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves. That fact loomed over every analysis. Trump referenced Venezuela's oil wealth in past statements, often portraying it as squandered under mismanagement. While he did not explicitly link the operation to resource control in his announcement, critics noted that any foreign administration of the country would inevitably involve its energy sector. That raised alarms about economic motivations layered beneath security rhetoric. The information war. As governments scrambled, the information space fractured. Some outlets reported Trump's claims verbatim. Others emphasized Venezuelan denials. Many led with uncertainty. Social platforms amplified the most dramatic versions of events, often stripping away qualifiers. In this environment, belief hardened before verification. By morning, millions of people around the world were convinced a regime change had occurred. What running a country actually means. Running a nation is not symbolic. It requires control over ministries, borders, currency, security forces, and infrastructure. It requires boots on the ground or compliance from existing institutions. Trump did not outline how such control would be established, how long it would last, or under what legal framework it would operate. The absence of detail deepened uncertainty. Was this a military occupation, a provisional authority, a rhetorical overstatement? Each interpretation carried different consequences, none of them small. The risk of escalation. If the U.S. were perceived as occupying Venezuela, allied states of Venezuela could respond, not necessarily with immediate force, but through cyber operations, proxy conflicts, or economic retaliation. Latin America, long resistant to foreign military presence, could see internal unrest spike as populations reacted to perceived imperial overreach. Even if Trump's claims proved exaggerated, the damage to trust would remain. The question of verification. As the day progressed, journalists sought independent confirmation of Maduro's whereabouts. The government verified U.S. custody. Why words alone matter. Even if no occupation followed, Trump's statement changed the frame. By asserting control verbally, he shifted global expectations. Diplomacy now had to respond to the U.S. governance in Venezuela. In international relations, declared intent can be as destabilizing as action. Where things stand. As of now, Trump maintains that the U.S. will oversee Venezuela. International bodies are demanding clarification. Legal challenges are already being discussed. The situation remains fluid, contested, and unresolved. Whether this moment becomes a historical turning point or collapses under scrutiny depends on what follows. What cannot be undone is the statement itself. The idea that one nation can simply run another has been spoken aloud by the U.S. President Donald Trump with a global audience. That alone has consequences. History shows that once such language enters the bloodstream of politics, it rarely leaves quietly. Not left, not right, just real.